Greetings, adventurer. Welcome to the Ocean County Library's 10th episode of Forge Your Imagination, a guide to immersive world-building podcast, a series that'll point creative individuals in the right direction when attempting to create your own world. I'm your host, Tom, a world-building enthusiast and professional dungeon master with over 13 years of experience. In today's episode, I will be discussing extended lore ideas that could spice up your world. Now, without further ado, let's get this quest on a roll. There are various ways to extend your world's reach, and one of the best ways to do so is by building world lore that isn't technically needed. What I mean by that is if you have listened to my other episodes, you have likely created everything that you need to forge your own successful world. This episode will contain details that aren't technically required to make a world run, but they do add a bit of fun lore and spice for your audience. This information that surrounds the world and the story, but takes place in the background, is typically what I consider extended lore. In most cases, this will include names, organizations, and rankings that enhance the general world lore that you're trying to build. Let me give you an example to start. Let's say that I was making a story about teen mages who are learning to use magic under the safe watch of school professors. This story typically wouldn't need much external information other than what they read in textbooks. However, if we wanted to add a bit of flair, then we could include little snippets about other arcane academies. This helps build a broader world that seems more realistic because it shows this isn't the only academy available. These newly mentioned academies will give brief insight into other school opportunities and maybe explain why students were so lucky to attend this school instead of the other ones. In my first high fantasy universe I created, school was a foreign concept. The only people to receive formal teaching were nobility, so this was something I didn't even bother building upon. However, in my second universe of Solera, my Dungeons & Dragons players had the opportunity to start playing their characters from back when they were teens enrolled in school. Since the players opted for this experience, I ended up detailing school structures, teachers' names, and other information like other arcane academies. However, if a school isn't even part of the story you plan on telling, that's also fine. In this case, you could use this detail to highlight some of the characters' background elements to, a graduated student or maybe someone who was just recently hired or interviewed. All of this extended lore really depends on how in-depth you'd like to go. I'll start by giving you an example of how to create good school structures and decide on different locations to build a school. For my universe of Solera, this magical universe takes place hidden behind the normal world we live in. What I mean by this is that I had to decide where to build the magical academies, but I knew they must be built away from the mortal population's eyes. I had a few ideas on how this could be achieved, but I decided on these locations because of their iconic nature or well-hidden areas. The first and most important one for me was the main academy that my players attend, which is called Solera. This academy is one of 6 and is simply known as the most diverse and inclusive school offered to the magical population. This fictional school is ranked number 3 out of 6 and can be found by traveling through the Niagara Falls. After being escorted through this waterfall, you'll find yourself at a huge plot of land that is rumored to be a deceased behemoth. This land is full of giant sequoia trees, making it nearly impossible to navigate to the school other than a single river channel that leads inside the body of the land, straight to the school. The other schools I will go down in order of rank to simply describe them, starting at rank 1. At rank 1, we have the school known as the Magisterium. This building is well hidden within Athens itself and is considered the Greek branch of the academy. This prestigious school and its students tend to think they're better than everyone else because they live close to the origin of magic. They are quite obnoxious, however, because their students end up being elite spellcasters that eclipse other schools in comparison. This is partially only because the families that could attend this school are the 24 noble progenitor families. At rank 2, this leads us to the Amaterasu School of Magic, hidden within Hokkaido in Japan. This Japanese high school for magically gifted students is one of the most popular schools in the magical world, especially because they have the financial backing of the 12 noble vampire families. This school usually prioritizes being in the mountains and has the goal of bringing peace and harmony between nature and the kami, which kami are otherwise known as gods. They believe that those who are born with magic have been gifted by the kami and must use their magic to uphold tradition and serve and protect. Therefore, their curriculum usually revolves around defensive magic as a priority, along with alchemy, reiki, and undead studies. Since I've already explained rank 3, which, is Solera, we'll dive into rank number 4, which is the Atlan Ascension Academy. Located in the Amazon rainforest, this school is for those who love water. They naturally produce the world's top water mages. They specialize in seamanship, diving, and magical marine biology. Anyone who graduates from this school is seen as a leader in white magic and aquatic life. They get hands-on experience with joint training classes with mermaids that teach them all about life underwater. These students start by raising koi, goldfish, and catfish until they're experienced enough to go on their first fishing trip. During this fishing trip, the mermaids actually help the new students catch their first magical aquan familiar. At the very end of their school career, the students are then blessed by the guardian of the mermaids, which is actually a juvenile leviathan. Rank 5 is up next, and that academy can be found within the Black Forest in Germany. In this school called the Grove, that's for those who are in tune with nature. They admit students who are considered green witches with a green thumb. The teachers work closely with dryads and ents to preserve nature and make sure that they are not affecting the forest and their inhabitants negatively. These students mainly focus on herbology, potion making, and alchemy as their required courses. The school produces reliable, open-minded students, but the students lack the power and funding to be considered the top 3 schools. Lastly is the school ranked number 6, which is known simply as the Fingari, and it is hidden within the Appalachian Mountains, and is seen as a tribal school full of mages who don't have much contact with the rest of the world. They are typically seen as nothing more than barbarians by other magical users. After being admitted into the school, students are split up by their strength and put into separate tribes and clans. It is also rumored that the school has a terrible status which is frowned upon by the majority of mages. This bad name for the school is a touchy subject for their students, and so it's encouraged not to ask about their school or home life. Now, after that long example of different schools and general world lore, let's dive into the structure of a school. Each school will have its own parameters on what the rules are, and what they have to enforce, and what the school itself looks like. What this means is that, there's different ways to build upon it and have fun with it. For example, in the Academy of Solera, this school has listed various different classes and locations within the school. Since my school is both magical and more medieval style, I ended up coming up with some interesting locations to build in, much like an armory for smithing, a wand crafting room, an animal farm for non-magical familiars, and the kennels, where they house familiars that are smaller than 8 feet tall. Then you have things like the gateway, which is one long hallway where you could enter any number of magical artworks that lead to a different location within the school. Or you could look at the portal realm, which is located outside in the middle of the courtyard. Here there are large archways made from the wood of Yggdrasil that lead into individual clearings. These archways are made by the elves and are marked by the strange, exquisite runes carved into their frames. A mage only has to pump their magic in, and it opens up its own seemingly separate dimension that's able to store magic creatures in their natural habitats. And then lastly, we have buildings like the Colosseum, where duels are supervised by an instructor. Live long and pursue some of the fun events that the Ocean County Library has to offer. We offer fun programs for teens called Dungeons & Dragons for Teens. This is a wonderful experience for young adventurers. Players who are ages 13 to 18 can join an adventure in the wonderful world of Dungeons & Dragons. However, space is limited, so please be sure to register. This program is available at select branches like the Brick, Lacey, Point Pleasant Beach, and the Toms River Library. You could find more information on our calendar of events at theoceancountylibrary.org. I would also like to give you a gentle reminder that the Ocean County Library gives card owners access to numerous databases that can help you with world building and storytelling. 2 databases in particular that I would advise you to look into would be Udemy and Universal Class. These databases have excellent courses for writers who would like to learn and polish their skills, as well as various other fascinating courses that you might be interested in. This information and more can also be found on our website, theoceancountylibrary.org, under Digital Materials. Now, adventurers, grab your anvil and hammer because it's time to return to forging your imagination. Now, let's take a darker turn and look at some of the hidden horrors within your world. If you have conflict in your world, then you likely have people who are considered both good and evil. For these individuals you deem as evil, you'll likely need a place to lock them up, much like a prison. How would you personally build this prison? Is it a lot of small cages that simply add up to one big one in the long run? Or do you have multiple different locations that store a couple mages at each location? Or just one really big one? In my world of Solera, they lock up any rogue witches and warlocks who have committed crimes or have used dark magic. This prison I personally use is 3 different floors, all of which that appear differently than the last. These floors can even change shape and appearance depending on the current time. The first floor is reserved for people who are high-class citizens or have connections in high places, like the noble families. These are where minor criminals who haven't used dark magic or committed grievous crimes like murder stay. Unlike the other floors, these people are unchained. They have no prison cell. It's more like one large room that has transformed itself into an individual realm, like a small forest. It has a beach inside with water to swim, and is refreshed daily by draining the magic out of the prisoners, making them unable to cast spells. The second floor is where the majority of people are put. If they have committed any crime less than murder or the use of dark magic, here's where they go. They're thrown into this cage that has the necessities to live, like a toilet, bed, sink, and shower. However, this is made of reinforced and enchanted see-through glass and silver floors. Much like the first floor, magic is siphoned out of the prisoners. Although this one, it's a little bit more harsh. It continues to siphon magic until they come very close to passing out. They are then often patrolled by familiars like Wendigos outside, so that if a prisoner manages to somehow escape, they meet a pretty grim demise. Then we get to my final floor, which is the third floor. This is honestly a place of horrors. It is layered with spells to keep prisoners in and is often patrolled on the outside by powerful familiars. They are thrown into a small cell where they barely have enough room to stand, and they're delivered food once a day. These prisoners have a ball and chain attached to their hand that drains magic. They can, however, leave through the large gap in the back of the cave if they're strong enough. Those who leave are subjected to the horrors of reality. They go into a world where they're forced to fight and hide to survive. This small realm that is created for this prison is about the size of 8 football fields and gives off red light shining above that puts any familiars in the area into a fit of rage. This leads us to our next part, which is how to create ghosts and their classifications. Let's say that I was working on a world building project that is a bit spookier in nature. It involves a lot of ghosts, and if I wanted to build upon this, I could separate ghosts into different categories other than just a poltergeist. I could say in my world of Solera, I've detailed several different versions of ghosts and what they're able to do in the real world. Let's start with a simple one. This is called a mimic, otherwise known as an echo. It could copy the voice of whatever creature they haunt. They're known to be able to lead mages into danger and take great pleasure from causing discomfort. Luckily, these ghosts are only able to make sounds. They can't maintain a form, move objects, or possess a being. And obviously, they are considered evil because they get their joy from leading people into these dangerous situations. Now, every mage knows that they should be on the lookout for doppelgangers and mimics because both of these creatures can mimic the voices of friends and loved ones. They are often employed by dark mages for escape purposes and to leave threatening messages behind. The administration and law enforcement do not hide their disdain for this type of ghost, and because of what this ghost could do, it leads other mages to be more weary of ghosts in general. Next up, we have phantoms, otherwise known as deviants. These unwelcomed ghosts are usually in places that they don't belong. These ghosts have no ties and often drift from place to place, causing trouble and mischievous natures. These ghosts are the type to likely go rogue and become a poltergeist. They are known for their mischievous and childlike wonders, often causing mages to be annoyed. They are often in it for the laugh, and sometimes people report them as malicious in nature and a terror to be around. They are one of the ghosts, however, that are able to convince other undead to go haunt other places or people, since they can have conversations. Next, we have poltergeists. These are ghosts that have gone rogue. In this state, a ghost is able to manifest itself into the physical plane, meaning that it could touch or hurt somebody. They are also able to move multiple objects with ease and forcibly possess a person's body. They are considered vulgar and evil. These creatures always actively seek to harm the living. Ghosts of this caliber are to be hunted down and exterminated by a specter squad led by a special unit of clairvoyant mediums from the Morgan progenitor family. This leads us to shades. These ghosts, otherwise known as shadow people, are spirits of people who are unable to be seen. Due to their embarrassed nature and inability to handle anxiety during their life, they are unable to be seen other than out of the corner of your eye. Other than being shy, they are often seen as creepy, since it seems like they watch people from afar and appear when you least expect them. Most mages tend to dislike shades because of this, but in reality, they're quite pleasant individuals who seek to help people. They often point out lost items out of the corner of people's eyes and are seen to interact fondly with animals and pet them. They are often found in the school, hiding away in the kitchen where they cook for the students and then they come out at night and clean. Next up, we have specters. These are ghosts that are tied down to a specific area, item, or, in rare cases, a person. They are humanoid in nature and give off a pale, ghostly white or blue aura. Because of this, they're generally easy to spot, other than if the specter in question is a paragon. For paragon specters, these rare individuals are able to retain their humanistic features and coloration. Their dispositions tend to vary because it depends on how they were when they were alive. Some ghosts don't even know that they're dead. As for how useful they are, they could do various different things that mages ask them to. They are, however, limited to the amount of distance that they could go from their tether. This tether could be an item like a necklace or a person, or something stationary, like a statue. These are usually seen as the most productive type of ghosts since they could talk and interact rationally with other mage kind. In the School of Solera, the principal employs several of ghosts under this classification to guard the school from prying eyes and stay vigilant to keep out other types of ghosts. Then we have wisps. These are spirits that are unable to manifest a human form. What this means is that they could still interact with items and move them, but they're unable to change into like a humanoid shape or possess another being. They seem to be unable to communicate because of this lack of a humanoid form, but they can change colors to signify basic answers. Green is documented to be yes, red is no, and blue is general confusion or not understanding what's being asked. As for their disposition, not much is known about them other than the fact that they enjoy being given work. Since they are unable to talk or interact with living beings, they seem to crave attention and praise when delivering messages or supplies. Most wisps tend to work for the corporation Wisp Warranty, which is a major contributor to delivering all sorts of goodies. Now, if you wanted to build upon this even further, using those different types of ghosts and their abilities, we could form separate organizations to sort the majority of ghosts into. This would give ghosts of your world some type of meaning and motivation instead of just leaving them as stagnant individuals in your story. In my universe of Solera, I make use of 4 major ghost corporations that make the world more unique. The easiest one is always the one to create that's seen more so as evil. In my universe, the evil one of the 4 ghost corporations is called Spectral Ruin. This is an organization full of demented ghosts that actively try to harm people and work with dark mages. That's because evil ghosts derive their power from people's fears, anxiety, and depression. For this reason, the organization is seen as evil, and the Shadow Legion, which is a different corporation I'll be mentioning later, is often sent to deal with these kind of ghosts. As one would expect, this organization is considered illegal, and any members of this organization are to be taken into custody for question and then exorcised. The second organization would be Wisp Warranty. As I mentioned briefly before, these ghosts lack a humanoid body shape and would go mad with boredom if it wasn't for working at the post office and delivering mail. Delivering these packages and other supplies seem to be the only thing that give them purpose. This is a legal business that has been approved by the administration, as well as the Move Corporation, which gives them a 5 out of 5 star rating. The third organization is simply known as Spectral Reconnaissance. Considering they could easily hide and are unseen like ninjas, they are excellent at gathering information, finding people's locations, and checking in on loved ones. One of their most popular services is to actually hire a private inspector. And yes, that is a play on words for, a normal private inspector, just spelled differently like Spectre. I thought it was kind of funny. Their most popular thing, though, to hire a private inspector to do, though, is to confirm suspicions on infidelity or find out where someone is hiding. This is a legal business that has been approved by the administration. However, legality only applies if this information is gathered in a public sector and the ghost did not trespass on private property. Ghosts who break this law are to be excommunicated or exorcised immediately. And the last and final organization I have created is called Shadow Legion. They are the only beings other than an exorcist that could clear the way for an unwanted ghost. After all, there is no other way to beat a ghost than with another more powerful ghost. The term ghost hunter and ghost exterminator were actually created based on this profession, where ghosts of deceased knights and honor-bound individuals who have passed away continue fighting and protecting their household and families beyond the veil of death. This is a legal business that has been approved and endorsed by the Prostasis. This organization is led by the legendary knight simply known as Galahad. Now that we have wrapped up the segment on ghosts, the last section I will be discussing today in our extended lore podcast episode is how to classify pets and general animal companions in a magical universe. This will help break down animals depending on their skills and general usages, as well as help create a basis on how much they should cost because of these details. Now, you could use real existing non-magical creatures, or you could use magical creatures that exist in mythology, just because it's that much easier. They already exist and they've already been created. Or you could go above and beyond, and you could create your own magical creature. A good way to create your own, if you're interested, is to simply combine two creatures and make it some type of hybrid chimera creature out of it. To make things simpler for my players, I created 4 different tiers of animal companions for my Dungeons & Dragons world. It goes in order from weakest and least amount of money required to buy to, what I think is the most skilled animal companion. Coming up as the first tier, we have house pets. These are animals seen most commonly as house pets. They don't tend to have any combat-oriented skills and can't really protect themselves from danger. These creatures are usually small in nature and used for more of emotional support and companionship. A good example of some of these creatures would be things like cats, gerbils, bunnies, squirrels. They're also the most affordable in the fantasy realm and usually cost around 2 copper to a maximum of 50 silver. The next and second tier we have would be utility. These pets are what some people use to extract resources from, much like a cow gives milk. Or it's a type of animal that could help them with a specific job, like carrying something. They're typically much like house pets, they don't have any combat skills and lack, the ability and mental prowess to protect themselves and their owners. A good example of these animals would be cows, donkeys, sheep, and their prices are usually around 80 silver to 3 gold. Up next, in third place, we have scouts. Pets from this category are meant, just like their category implies, to scout out and track prey, or help deliver people to that prey quicker and safely. These creatures usually have a small number of abilities and have keen senses. They vary in size, but come usually in small to mid-sized creatures. A good example of these animals would be birds of prey like hawks or falcons, or other animals like a fox, a hound, or a medium-sized horse, which is able to safely deliver them to whatever they're tracking. They also end up being more expensive. Their prices start usually around 75 silver and raise up to about 15 gold pieces. Then, lastly, the tier that I use to complete it is called the warrior class. And as one would expect, these pets are usually made to guard and fight alongside their masters. They usually defend themselves and take orders well. Their sizes typically vary from medium to huge, and a good example of these creatures would be jaguars, griffins, and manticores. They are often usually more expensive as well, with babies of these creatures being sold for as low as 3 gold to as high as 450 gold. However, that's all I have for today. I hope I was able to open your eyes to a little bit of the possibilities. I know that I definitely didn't cover everything that Extended World could cover, but I just gave you a couple of examples how I've used it over my personal worlds, and how you could really use them to enrich your universe. Feel free to tune in to our next episode and final episode, where I will be discussing how to connect your universe to other possible realms.
If you are hearing this message, you've officially listened to the entire episode, and for that, I'd like to thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a look over some of our other OCL Soundwaves podcasts. Feel free to leave us a rating on Spotify, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. Most importantly, safe travels, adventurers.